In order to build the walls, you'll need a 50-pack count of skewers. You can use a chop saw, or alternatively, you can just break them in half and sand down the edges. You want to base the overall length on the size of your miniature, and you want to stagger the different heights just so that it doesn't look like it's a uniform fence. This is a fighting pit after all. Once you've got your pile of sticks together, I went ahead and used a little dab of hot glue on the top and bottom posts to put these together in pairs of 2. Don't be afraid if it gets a little messy here. You're going to use the twine to cover up the glue spots later on anyway. When I started this project, I thought it would be a simple build. Part of crafting is learning when to fail and keep trying until you get it just right. I'll skip through a lot of the different attempts here to get this twine to work, but this took me about half an hour until it dawned on me. Some of you might not have access to a proxon, and that's fine. I'll show you an alternate method to build the base. This is ready board, the kind that Black Magic Craft is always talking about. You can get it from the dollar store. Peel back the black layer, take yourself a drinking cup, draw a circle around it. So to give it texture, I used the rolling pin, the flagstone rolling pin from Green Stuff World. Alternatively, if you don't have this product and you want to do this build, you could draw it in with some pen, and or you could use the tinfoil ball method and put some stone texture on there if you don't want the flagstone. Carefully cut it out with your crafting knife, and then you're finished. Now my base is made of pink XPS foam, but if you don't have that, you can use the ready board foam. So I went ahead and glued down my Hearst Arts base. Again, you can use the ready board if you don't have access to this. And then once this step is complete, I started adding in the spiked poles. Using a piece of scrap foam, I carefully cut out 1 square inch pieces. That's a 1 inch thick piece of foam by 1 inch, just making sure all the sides were even. Once I figured out the height that I wanted, I simply just duplicated along the piece of XPS foam and made several duplicates. The semi-finished piece will look something like this. So then we'll use some hot glue here and start adding the wood panels that will really make the statue pop out. Last step is I added a second raised panel that is slightly smaller than the first to give it some depth of field. And here's what an early prototype looks like still before we add on the barbecue sticks. The base of the statues, I just took the flagstone rolling pin and once again rolled it over the pink XPS foam, giving it a nice indentation that will take the paint nicely. I then covered all the XPS foam as well as the tile with a combination of the Black Magic Craft Mod Podge and black craft paint, just to give this a solid base coat and to seal in the XPS foam from when I use the last steps and varnish everything. At this point, I come in with a dark gray and give the statues a base coat, followed by a light gray and finally a black wash. I'd already given the skewers a base coat in burnt umber, straight out of the craft pot. No need to dilute it. And then what I'm doing here is dry brushing chestnut on top of it to take it up to the next step using a cheap dollar store makeup brush. That was a great tip. I saw on a few different people's pages. Black Magic Craft had mentioned it and a few others, so thanks for that. It really worked out well and saved my expensive GW brushes from taking the brunt of this attack. Here I'm taking up the statue another layer from dark gray and light gray up to suede, and then I'm going to black wash the figure to bring it back down to a more realistic stone texture. Here I'm giving the stone a wash of dark black wash, just to bring all the highlights back down and give the stonework some depth where the overpainting had taken away some of the detail in the cracks and recesses of the stone. I also applied a layer of the black wash to all the stone figures and the bases that they were standing on to give it some worn and aged look to it. While the wash is drying, I went ahead and did one final highlight on the wood piles, and I used a apple seed color called khaki just to give the wood and rope just one more level of highlight to really make it pop. Some other things that you can add to your base that will add it some character and depth of detail is the Citadel pack of skulls. It's 340 skulls for like 25 bucks. And then I use these Army Painter marshland tufts. And I try to get fancy here with tweezers and just ended up using my fingers. But you can place those where to simulate where grass has pushed through the cracks and just give it some interesting flair and color. The project didn't seem quite right, so I went back into my bits box and found some old Marauder shields. I painted them up quickly, and then I cast a little chaos symbol from a mold I made, put it in the center, and then attached the shields to the outside using some Zap-A-Gap glue. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, leave a like and a comment below, and we'll have a new video up next week. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, there's always room for one more soul in the 7th circle.